Well, a statement late this afternoon that UN Ambassador Susan Rice was withdrawing her name for consideration to be nominated for Secretary of State. In that statement, she said, among other things, this, quote, "I am now convinced that the confirmation process would be lengthy, disruptive, and costly to you, the President, and to our most pressing national and international priorities. That trade-off is simply not worth it to our country." The President had a statement of his own, quote, "While I deeply regret the unfair and misleading attacks on Susan Rice in recent weeks, her decision demonstrates the strength of her character and admirable commitment to rise above the politics of the moment to put our national interests first. The American people can be proud to have a public servant of her caliber and character representing our country." Now, the President, inside sources said, really wanted Susan Rice to be the next Secretary of State. He talked about it. At least he defended her publicly numerous times.
If Senator McCain and Senator Graham and others want to go after somebody, they should go after me. And I'm happy to have that discussion with them. But for them to go after the UN ambassador, who had nothing to do with Benghazi, and was simply making a presentation based on intelligence that she had received, and to besmirch her reputation, is outrageous.
Susan Rice is extraordinary. Couldn't be prouder of the job that she's done at USUI.
This, of course, around her statements after the September 11th terror attacks in Benghazi, Libya on the Sunday shows. We're getting word ABC News is reporting that the President will meet with Susan Rice at the White House tomorrow.
Well, I think this is one instance where the President's vanity yielded to necessity. That defense of Susan Rice that we saw, probably the worst defense of anybody since Brutus is an honorable man, was simply himself getting carried away, saying, you know, don't touch the little lady, I'll defend her. And he sort of put himself out there as if this is a challenge to my authority, and implying that he would have to nominate her. But cooler heads prevailed. I'm not sure whose they were. But clearly, had she been nominated, Benghazi scandal would have been on the front page. And I think with her not being nominated, Benghazi scandal will die in the mainstream media. They will have no interest in this story, and that's why I think the President sought safety. I think he put himself out there, and he would have rather have had her, and I think he feels he somehow had yielded. And her consolation, I think, will be he will make her National Security Advisor, which is a very powerful position. It does not require the assent of the Senate. Remember, Henry Kissinger in the first term of Nixon, where they did all this amazing stuff, he was a National Security Advisor. He then became Secretary of State. So it could be, even in theory and in history, it's been a more powerful position than Secretary of State if the President wants it to be, and he might want it to be in her case.
Take a listen to the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee on CNN today. I should point out that Secretary of State Clinton is scheduled to testify on Capitol Hill next week, but the State Department is saying that's not a done deal as of yet, and it's not a done deal that this report is going to be finished and brought forward to Capitol Hill. Take a listen to Rogers.
I feel very strongly, Wolf, that there was a gross negligence when it came to the physical security of the ambassador at the mission there in Benghazi. That was very clear to me. Some very, very bad decisions were made, and I think contributed to the death of the ambassador and three other great Americans. So that part, I think, is taking great shape. I think the intelligence part is coming together. It sounds to me, or looks to me, when I review everything, that it looked pretty good leading into the day and then the days after, and I think it's clear that there was some political interpretation of the intelligence in the days after.
Charles, gross negligence is not, that's not sugarcoating.
No, I think not, and I think these reports will be quite negative. But I think two things. Number one, they're going to be dropped on a Friday afternoon, probably at Christmas or something. I mean, these are not going to be heralded from the White House or from the State Department. And so they'll be done in the middle of a frenzy on the fiscal cliff or who knows what else. And second, unless you have a person there, a poster child for the scandal, and that would have been Susan Rice, in hearings for Secretary of State, which would have made a dramatic story. You can't escape it. The media would have to cover it, I think, showing how little interest the media have had up until now. I think they will be less enthusiastic. Now, there are 3 scandals here. They're real scandals. I'm just sort of projecting what I think the media will do if there's no circus over Susan Rice over this, as you would have had she been nominated.
Polls, Fox News poll out today. Federal government is providing too many services, 49%. Too few services, 20%. Right amount, 25%. A lot of questions about spending, and people are concerned about spending. If you ask them about it, they know, passing on things to their kids and their grandkids, that you can't handle $16.3 trillion in debt.
But unfortunately, it seems to be an abstraction. When you offer people real cuts, they generally will say, no, I don't want them. I want cuts that will cut somebody else. Let me make 2 points on your reporting. The idea that the readout that this was a frank discussion. Well, frank is a word to use in diplomacy. And when it was used in the Cold War, when Kennedy would meet Khrushchev and they would announce that the meetings were frank, people would restock the bomb shelters. So that is as cold a word as you can get. It means nothing happened, and they might even have been angry. The other part of this is the progress on these negotiations. I mean, I likened it last night to a tortoise 10K. So let me do a sports center on the new developments. The Republican tortoise has advanced a neck length. The Democratic one hasn't moved. In fact, some observers think it's dead. It hasn't moved in a month. Obama's not going to move. He's not going to offer anything. Boehner's going to have to decide how he capitulates.
This has been a Sunfish production.